Our sponsors for this episode are Shamrock Car Wash. Shamrock Car Wash has 3 convenient locations in Newton, Wichita, and Mays. They were also voted Best Car Wash in Harvey County for 2024. Shamrock Car Wash offers a traditional hands-on wash bays, but also touts an in-bay touch-free wash and dry for an effortless clean. Make sure to look them up and follow them on Facebook at Shamrock Car Wash. That's Shamrock Car Wash. Or you can visit them online at theshamrockcarwash.com. That's theshamrockcarwash.com. MTO Commercial and Residential Cleaning Services. MTO has been, still is, and will always be a locally owned and operated company. Paula started MTO in 1994 and has been serving Harvey County residents ever since. If you're looking for a one-time clean or a weekly, bi-weekly, or a monthly spruce-up, no need to worry. MTO gives free estimates. Give Paula a call at 316-288-9141. That's 316-288-9141. Absolute Drain. Look. No one, and I mean no one, likes it when their sink, bathtub, washing machine, or especially their toilets start backing up. It's even worse when they won't drain or flush at all. No matter who you are, it happens to us all. If this is happening to you, then you need to give Garth with Absolute Drain a call. Absolute Drain is located at 420 West Broadway in Newton and has been faithfully serving Newton and surrounding areas for longer than I can even remember. I personally use Absolute Drain, and they have kept my pipes cleaned out and flowing day one. It might just be time for you to give them a call too at 316-283-7264. That's 316-283-7264. Well, hello, everybody, and hello, Andy and Chad. How was your guys' week this week?
Busy.
Tiring. Exhilarating.
It's good.
There you go.
Andy?
Fan-freaking-tastic.
Yeah?
Been running hard, and I've been in 2 cities in 3 days, so let's do it.
That's all good things. Moving, shaking, and entrepreneuring and all that.
Trying.
Yeah?
We've got some risk out there. We're trying to bring it back.
Yeah?
So if not, I'm in trouble. But hey, bring it on. That's what we do.
It's low risk, low reward, high risk, high reward.
I get to do it. I really get to do it, and that's the thing, right? You take risks, but the potential behind those risks are mind-boggling to my little brain. So I'm grateful. Things are good, but I'm puckering. But let's go.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
Well, good fortune headed your way.
Thank you.
That's what I believe. Okay,
appreciate that.
So some really cool things happened. Had an update with the chamber and an update with Carly Stavola from the USD 373. She's a communications director. Most people know who she is, but it was an update, and she covered some stuff about some real amazing things that had taken place with our student athletes. So I've been watching that and seeing how it unfolds in Halstead, and there's some other places around here in Harvey County, and Harvey County's just really killing it when it comes to our student athletes and some of the amazing accomplishments they have. And I was noticing just post after post after post from the Kansan. So I'm gonna throw it on over to you, Chad, to be able to give us that part of the local news and any other kind of local news you got. But please cover our student athletes that are doing amazing things.
Oh, yeah. Well, we need to talk about something that's super cool. I don't think it's a secret that I'm a fan of wrestling. All right.
You took off your wrestling hoodie just before.
Well, I did, but yeah, as much as I love Lucas Kaufman, and I do, and the fact is he's now 46-1 on the season with a state championship.
Amazing.
Yeah, go Railers, man. Wow. I'm telling you what. The real headline right now comes from our girls wrestling team because, oh man, we had 2 state champions at the girls wrestling tournament, and they are the first 2 girl state champion wrestlers for Newton High School in school history.
Bravo.
And amazing. That is freaking cool.
Yeah, setting the bar high for our Lady Railers.
Yes,
it is.
Yes.
That's that's a premonition to a future of many, many more years to come.
Lady
Railer wrestling might be number 1.
Yeah, I was super stoked when Newton went ahead and started the program because Keisha decided they were going to sponsor it, and Newton just stepped up and said, "Here we go." So Brooklyn Treaster, who if you're a wrestling fan, that name should mean something to you, in all honesty.
Oh, yeah.
Because she finished this season 28-5. She is one of two of the first state champions for Newton High School history. But she is not the first treester. She joins Logan, Grant, and Nick, her brothers, all state champs. And a father, Matt, who was a state champion when he was in high school. And I guess here's some history for you, man. I just missed it by like a year. Being able to watch him wrestle at 126 pounds for Navy at the NCAA championships.
Wow.
Right. I know the guy who beat him. I've met the guy who beat him, but I just wasn't able to see him. So there's your wrestling family, folks. I mean,
well, don't leave out the Thalls. I mean,
yeah,
yes, all respect to the treesters and their legacy, but the
Thalls are incredible.
Yep.
The Thalls are absolutely amazing. And I'm pretty sure that I saw Jack wrestle when he was wrestling in the Big 8, but
Wow.
I'm not
100%.
I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure I at least saw him
So
somewhere along
what the heck
the
is
line.
this history for you and watching all these and knowing where all these guys are and give me some background on you and the wrestling thing.
Well, the history is that when I was about 5 years old, my father looked at me and said, "We're going to go watch the two best college wrestling teams in the country next Friday night." That's Iowa versus Iowa State. And at the time, they were ranked 1 and 2 in the country.
Wow.
And I was like, cool. And he said, your grandma went and got us tickets. She worked at the University of Iowa. Your grandma went and got us some tickets. We're going to be in the front row at the field house. So we were sitting right behind the Iowa State cheerleaders. I don't care who you are.
That's all it took.
Yeah. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your preconceived notions of any given sport is. If your exposure is watching the best in the world go at it over and over and over again, you're going to fall in love with it. So that touched off me and my father go. I mean, he doesn't remember us getting season tickets, but I sure do. I was a season ticket holder for the University of Iowa wrestling team for 13 years, and during those 13 years, they won 9 consecutive national championships, and they won the Big Ten championship every single year. So we were watching the best in the world. So that's where that history comes from. I missed going to the NCAAs that Matt was in by a year.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And
So, yeah.
and like one of the very first conversations I had with Matt, I was like, dude, based on your size, you probably would have wrestled Brad Penrith. And he's like, oh, man. He goes, yeah, he beat me. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, so
that's probably super personal. For
Yeah. Like the one guy you bring up,
but at
you know?
the same time, it's like Matt was giving me like instant street cred. He's like, dude, you know your stuff. Well, I know the Iowa stuff, to be brutally honest about it.
So this is like an outlier type situation where you grew up in this community, and that's why you're such a huge Iowa fan. It just all kind of makes sense now.
Yeah.
I always kind of wondered. I never put those pieces. We never talked about this, even though we've had probably more hours than most together talking about crazy things. But so if you ever read the book The Outlier, that's what you're speaking of. You were in this position with this crazy situation. It just happened to land you in a community of high performance wrestlers, and you had access. And here's another thing interesting. Your Mennonite background, wasn't it kind of a bad thing to like stuff like that?
Right?
The wrestling and the contact and the
Wrestling is a biblical sport.
okay. And your family? It's just blanketed.
So
I love it.
and you know,
That's why they liked it so much. It was like they were doing something naughty.
Yeah.
No,
Violence without the violence.
I participated in a couple of years of youth wrestling when I was in elementary school, but it became painfully obvious that I was going to end up going to a private school, and they did not have a program. And so in junior high, you know, all the guys were like, man, you need to come out for the team. You need to come out for the team. We don't have anybody at your weight class. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to wrestle in high school. There's no point. I mean, I was pretty young when I started getting practicals.
Wow, that's good. Though.
So, but I never lost my love of the sport, right? I mean, and to that end, when I first moved to Kansas permanently, I took a job at the Hillsboro Star-Journal, a little weekly paper in Hillsboro. And I took that job in June, and I kind of got to know the lay of the land for sports. We had a sports writer, but he was limited in what he could do because he was contracted. So he concentrated on the high school, and I did the college. And I mean, it was just kind of one of those deals. Winter rolls around, and I called him up and I said, "Hey, I think wrestling practice is going to start. I need you to do a preview." And he's like, "I can't. I've got too much on my contracts already." I went, okay. So I went and met the coaching staff at Hillsboro High School. We sat and talked for just a little bit. They, of course, asked me where I was from, and I told them. And and I told them I had done things like meet Dan Gable and Ed Bannock, and spent time in Iowa City bars with someone who was a current coaching staff member at the University of Iowa. And, just those experiences. And the next thing I know, they're like literally begging me to cover as much as they can. And I did. I did what I had always done. My first 3 years of journalism, I was a sports writer in Iowa. And when you're a sports writer in Iowa, okay, wrestling is big. It's just big. It is a big deal. So if you're covering high school, and the best in the business right now is a guy named KJ Pilcher. He's incredible. He knows this calendar really well, and he has privately talked about it with me because it's tough. You get to this time of year and it's really nuts because you got to switch over to basketball.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, you've got a dual meet in the middle of the week, then you've got a tournament on Saturday. And if you're serious about covering wrestling in the state of Iowa, you have to go to all of that. There's no middle ground. You have to go to all of that.
Well, good job, Railers.
Yeah, when you do it here in Kansas, that calendar is a little different, and the expectations are different. But I did what I had learned how to do, and in my first year, thanks to the coaching staff at Hillsboro. Guys, you were awesome. I was named the Kansas Wrestling Coaches Association Media of the Year Award winner. Little 3,000 circulation weekly in the middle of blasted nowhere, and I was beating all the big boys. So there you go. There's your history.
Thanks for sharing.
All wrestling there, but also...
And Avery Hinos, I don't know if I used the name or not. She finished 32-4 on the season. State champ.
Is she a junior this year? I think she's a junior.
I didn't look up
I think she's
classes.
a junior. She's still got another year left.
Yeah.
And Matt Barron, got at least tip your cap to Matt Barron, okay? And we had a whole bunch of guys that qualified, and we had a freshman who finished third, Wade Stubbs.
Awesome.
Matt Barron got his 100th win at the state tournament. So, there's all kinds of tips, but the fact of the matter is we
celebrate those ladies, man.
Yeah, we got to celebrate those girls because that is just... And the headline I wrote was History Makers. That's it. History Makers. That's what they did. Yeah. And that is awesome.
And it's great. I like to see the evolution of this program move forward. And then, of course, at the very beginning, look how well the Railers are doing, these lady Railers, and what they're accomplishing. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure that they can, like we were talking about, can wrestle again in the future. So we're hopefully next year we'll have a repeat, right? So
and high school wrestling ain't the only wrestling you can do either.
Yeah.
Every one of these folks is going to be most likely on some of the summer circuits, and Lucas is going to be going after some folk style championships outside of the high school world. There's also Greco-Roman and there's also freestyle, and that's where the college coaches are just spending all their time recruiting is in those circles. But
Yeah.
it's way cool.
Well, not to forget basketball here, right? I know that the Halstead Dragon ladies are doing really well. I'm interested to see how their season ends out. Maybe they'll be a 2-time champion, right?
That'd be awesome.
I know that the Rayler boys this week are going to Andover, and hopefully
Tonight.
they're successful of that on
I
that
think
end.
they have more wins this year than the last
Oh.
3
Oh,
seasons.
Oh yeah, they're
combined.
ranked. I think
They're having in terms of wins and losses, they're having one of their best seasons in a long
Shout out to that team and coach,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
Really brought them a long way in just a short period of time.
Yeah, well, the Railers are building. I mean, it was. I also saw Junior Railers ladies took a first place or a second place. Were you guys up on that? Was it a first or a second? I don't want to misquote that.
I don't know, but
But,
they are building, and they've got great volunteers in that program that have sacrificed a lot, but you're starting to see the fruits at a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
And the boys and the girls, the Junior Railers basketball and the Junior Railer boys basketball, they have a really strong board. They have strong parents that are involved and coaches. It's just really exciting to see. And then a shout out to the Junior Railer Football Club too. They are opening up and taking registration. So please, and cheer. That program is moving in the right direction as well. So it's really exciting to see all this energy around youth sports and what's happening in all those clubs and the people who are choosing to invest that time to raise our future. It's amazing.
Okay, and I'll send a shout out, Patrick Charleston and Patrick Tierney. And it turns out that the girls took second place. In the first round, they beat the number 1 seed.
Good job,
So
Junior Railers.
they did a wonderful job. Congratulations on getting second there. So just don't forget basketball. I know we don't want to be overshadowed on all the accomplishments.
They're starting their sub-states right now.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah.
We'll see how they do.
Come on, Railers.
Railer girls are going to have a pretty tough road, but they've had a tough season as well. But they picked up a win just the other night, 1 point over Emporia, and those 1-point victories, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
That's always a big deal. It's one thing to go blow somebody out. It's another one to grit out a 1-pointer. And then the boys they're going to be at Andover Central tonight. So, it's important that I say, folks, we don't know how it's going to turn out, even though they will have already played by the time this posts.
Yeah.
But they're playing tonight at Andover Central. That's a team they just lost to, but
They beat them in the past, though. They're 1-1.
I got a feeling they can.
Yes.
A feeling they can get a different result because of the way that game played out.
Yeah, excited. That'll be a game to watch. And also, if you're familiar with it, it'd be nice that people get together, make sure they get to Andover. I'll try to get this out as fast as possible. Like you said, by the time it hits and it moves its way through the system, game will already. But we can cover that on the next program.
And I got to check the date. I want to say April, but that's not right. Science Olympiad is going to state.
That's cool.
Good.
Chisholm Middle School Science Olympiad is headed to state at Wichita State University.
Just winners, man.
Yeah.
Winning.
Yeah, there's a lot to celebrate in our community as far as our youth, especially. It's amazing things. Okay, so what else do you got, Chad, on local issues? Do you got anything else that you want to bring
When you got
up?
issues, I got... where do you want to start?
Oh, no.
So... yeah, it's been a very interesting week for the Harvey County Health Department. And there has been some discussion at the county commission. Some of it I felt should have not occurred in open session, but that's the way it is. But it's just been a very interesting week for them. And it all stems from the fact that how do I put this? According to Toby Harkins, he's the deputy director. They had a disaster. That's his words, right? That things just weren't done correctly. And the very first time that they issued a written quarantine notice, it got thrown out in court. It's quite a wild ride as I kind of walked through what happened and how that happened. So how it happened, gosh, is that there was a freshman at Bueller High School that was allegedly exposed to chickenpox on February 11th. And that exposure was, I'm not sure how it was documented. It just, all of that sounds really sketchy, by the Reno County Health Department. But that child actually lives in Harvey County. So that's how Harvey County becomes involved. Bueller Schools told the kid she had to stay away from school on February 14th. It was February, let's see, I got to skim my story. It was about a week later that the Harvey County Health Department was notified of this situation. So again, this is a child who's living in Harvey County, and that's why they became. Supposedly, Reno County had already told the family that she needed to be kept away from vulnerable populations, or possibly just not leave home. And then Reno County noticed Lynette Reddington, director of the Harvey County Health Department, on February 22. And she was on vacation at the time, out of state, so she couldn't get into any of her computer databases or anything from work. She went ahead and called Harkins and said, this is what we got. And Harkins attempted to make contact with the family, was not overly successful in that, and conversations were not cordial, which is totally understandable. Toby says the same thing. Totally understandable. Doesn't place any blame anywhere. And with the assistance of the county doctor, Dr. Doyle Detweiler, and they pulled a template of a quarantine, wrote it, signed it, delivered it. The 14-year-old in question was the only person home at the time, and so that's who was handed the notice. And everything came off the rails. Just absolutely off the rails. That child is due to be back in school today. That was pending an evaluation by a doctor. Because, I don't know, have you had the chicken pox?
I'm sure I have. I'm sure
Did you have chicken pox?
My parents probably waited until there was somebody that had chicken pox, and they took me over to their house and had a chicken pox party.
But
the rumor in my neighborhood was
tough,
if you got it the earlier you got it, the least intense it's not as intense. The older you get it, the worse it is.
Yep. You don't want to be an
I remember
adult
very
doing that.
vividly about 3rd or 4th grade getting it, and mine wasn't that bad. Just like 2 or 3 days or whatever of just having a little bit of itch here and there, and went away, and that was it. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, when it hit my family, it was bad.
Was it?
Yeah, and my sisters still have scars.
Oh shoot.
Yeah, it was rough. So it's not something to be taken lightly. Where things came off the rails for the health department, in all honesty, is that they wrote a quarantine order and not a what's the word that they used? Exclusion order. Not a statement that says you have to stay away from nursing homes, schools, whatever else, because you're trying to make sure that this infectious disease does not spread, and it is a serious one.
Well, and
she never came down with any symptoms, at least not as of yesterday. Now, chickenpox, it's a 21-day deal, right? So we remember COVID. They kept telling us 14 days. Chickenpox is 21. So she could be still okay. And as also with COVID, because when this came up at the county commission during the public comment, I heard a lot of people talking about COVID. Okay? And yeah, I get it. You were scared during COVID. You feel like you were abused by our government during COVID. I get all of that. This ain't COVID. It's just not.
I don't know.
This
is a tough
two different diseases that need to be
Yeah.
handled in two different ways. And and the county health department did make mistakes, and that's why that quarantine order got thrown out in a court hearing.
So it wasn't necessarily that they wanted to utilize their authority or position in the community to make sure that these diseases or these different things that crop up are not spread. Therefore, i.e., we quarantine. It's this. I don't know. I'm gonna have to read that article, Chad. That's coming out in what, the upcoming paper?
Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, I have to read that before I can comment on that.
Just be prepared, Lance. It's about double the length of most of my normal articles.
Well, and sometimes you need that extra to be able to. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to speak incorrectly, but it's interesting how things have evolved. Like I just mentioned, we had chickenpox parties. Because that was just the common trend at the point in time. And now all of a sudden we're quarantining anybody that came into contact that could potentially have chickenpox with this person. I mean, I almost want to say the pendulum swing the other way. I'm probably making everybody mad that's in the health profession.
But
I think the Gen Xers really had it right. That's all I'm going to say. We just
don't know
had that balance.
Yeah, and I don't know that any pendulum has really swung because...
And I am biased.
Because
of course, Red
Rover. Best games ever.
Commissioner Don Schrader, who is currently the chair of the commission, made some statements during this meeting. He's old enough to be my dad, guys. And he had chickenpox when he was a little guy. And... their family got a visit from the county health department. And they got told, don't go nowhere. Now, granted, he was pretty young and he's a long time ago, and so he doesn't remember if there was any written notice here. Okay? There's two ways a quarantine can happen, and both are very valid and very legal. One is somebody from the health department or a sheriff's deputy shows up with a quarantine order, written, like what happened in this case. Unfortunately, the guidance for measles, I do that all the time. The guidance for chickenpox is a little different. It doesn't say that you need to quarantine. It says you need to write an order of exclusion. Okay?
Yeah.
But the other way that those things happen is verbally. And that's how all of them happened during the pandemic. They didn't have time, quite honestly, they didn't have time during the pandemic to try and show up at everybody's house with a written order. They just didn't. It was coming too hot and heavy. Yeah. So...
well, there's also this too. I mean, we talk about this in the fact that the exact opposite was that when Andy and I don't know about you, Chad, I don't know if you confirmed this too, but it was we'll go over to their house, make sure let's get this chickenpox done with and out of the way.
No, I got it at school.
Okay, well,
me too.
And then I sat out of school for about 2 weeks.
Well, and isn't there an element, too, of personal responsibility? I always felt like the government didn't need to come in and tell me that if I thought I had COVID, that I was quarantined at my house. I just took the choice to remove myself from spreading it to other people. So there is.
Here's the problem. I mean, you can see it right here. That's a part of this particular story. Yeah, there's personal responsibility. You're supposed to keep your kid home when they're sick. If you're not going to keep your kid home, you're not being responsible. That's cold hard truth.
But this is also just a potential exposure. Yeah, that's why I gotta read the article. I gotta read the article.
Okay, yes, it's a potential exposure. So, as a parent, okay, this is how I see this. This is where I see the situation differently than the parents in this particular situation. As a parent, I want to know, my kid was exposed to chickenpox. Okay, what's the gestation period? How long do I need to observe them? What do I need to be doing to make sure that this doesn't spread? Okay, in this situation, keep them out of the nursing home. Duh. This is why my kids have yet to see their father who's been in the hospital. My father who's been in the hospital for 2 weeks. I don't know what they've been exposed to at school. And quite honestly, that's all on you guys. That's not on me. That's on all these people who send their kids to school when they're sick or been exposed. Okay?
They're just wanting to share the wealth, Chad. That's all they're
That's
saying.
what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
want it.
If I'm sick,
But-
then I'm going to go make sure
yes.
that everybody else gets what I have. Right?
Amen.
Yeah.
Personal responsibility is a part of this, but we cannot expect that responsibility out of anybody but ourselves.
Well, I can't argue.
So
that,
there you
Chad.
go.
Yeah, I can't argue that. Okay, you got anything else local? Because I got some pretty flashpoint topics this week.
I got one other thing that I wanted to highlight, and it sounds kind of trivial, but I think it's cool. When faced with the very real need to rearrange their capital outlay budget, the Road and Bridge Department started thinking way outside of the box. And so they wanted to buy a motor grader, and it was going to be expensive, and they had the money in their capital outlay budget to make that purchase, but in order to do that, they had to cancel a dump truck. They had budgeted for 2, and then look at a different way to get a hold of a barricade trailer, right? And this is what they put all of their little barricades on when they're going to close roads and take them off. And so what they chose to do was, instead of buy one of those things, because they also knew that they were probably going to want it customized, which means it's going to cost a lot more money, they bought an axle and they're building their own. So they had budgeted somewhere. Jim has never given me a hard line number on what they had budgeted specifically for this trailer. But what they did do is they budgeted $6,000 for construction, which tells me that, of course, when you're going to be budgeting significantly more money for a purchase. So right at this time, they've spent $3,600. They haven't figured out staff time yet. So they're building their own.
But also that staff time is included in.
Well,
so
yeah,
I read that article correctly.
he's just
It's when you
working
get
on
a
it in
chance
his
to do it.
he's working on it in his quote spare time, right? I mean, this goes back to efficiency, right? If you're just standing there on a mop, no, grab your welding stuff, get going.
Yeah, and I think there's a misnomer there too, because
So-
to say that I don't know, I think it's budgeting time because I highly doubt that there is a lot of downtime for employees in as much as
Not
they're
in the
just
Road and Bridge Department. There's like no,
reappropriation
bro.
of
Yeah,
things.
they don't have downtime over there.
Well, that's good. I like Jim Meyer. I've known him for a very long time. He does a wonderful job as a county department head. One of the ones that are entrusted with a very large amount of taxpayer dollars. A huge portion of our county budget goes to that department for the purposes of improvement and maintenance of these roads. And every time I see the man, or I tell him I appreciate him. Every time you hear him at a county commission meeting, he's doing a rock star job. You can go out and talk to him. I've toured the facility a couple times. That knows everything from top to bottom. I just hope that he continues to serve our community the way that he has for many more years to come. Don't know what his plans for the future are, but I think if we lost Jim Meyer at any point in time from doing what he does, that we would be in a completely different situation for a period of time.
We'd be in
before
a world of
anybody
hurt.
could catch up.
We'd be in a world of hurt. Not only is that guy always looking for how we can save money on projects, he's got an amazing amount of institutional knowledge.
Yeah, can't be replaced. Can't be replaced.
Institutional knowledge is something that is vastly underrated in our country today.
Yeah,
And straight up, when you lose it, you do not regain it. Somebody off the street, and this is a universal truth, I don't care what job you're talking about. Somebody you're going to bring in off the street may be cheaper in salary, but they're not going to have that institutional knowledge, and good luck getting it rebuilt.
yeah,
Because
or
it takes
passing
time.
on. Yeah,
Lots
yeah.
of it.
You have to have somebody that's an understudy for years before that happens. Okay, so did you guys by chance hear there was a couple things that kept cycling through the media here, or you call it local media, even though it's not necessarily local media. It's just an extension of a national media source. I mean, like, I think a lot of people don't understand Cake News, KDFCH News are just affiliates of a larger organization. So a lot of times, even though we would like to hope that there's a little bit more of an unbiased approach to what's transpiring, what they're reporting on, not so much, my opinion, not so much. There was a little bit of a fallout that took place on the Kansas House floor. Do you guys know anything about that?
You talking about the car thing?
Yes. Andy, did you hear anything about that? The most recent thing is that they are looking at the potential. Well, they've said that they're going to investigate the allegations and what transpired. And the headline said, which I think is awful. I don't know.
Was it this one about the physical altercation they had about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and then did it come out again?
It followed it. There was a verbal that came around too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I'll say this.
And I think the same person is involved.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot there.
Yeah, and then the one of the people that was involved, Representative Carr, was also the same individual that got into a fight, an actual physical fight with Councilman from Wichita Johnson.
Right.
I believe is what his last name is.
Yep. So I did hear about this. It's the follow-up.
Yeah, this is.
I didn't realize there was another incident.
It's kind of one of those things where I just got to say
it. Is it the same too?
No. The representative that is currently, and see, this is
Somebody's off the rails. There's a common denominator. I think, you look at the bigger picture. It's like, dude, get yourself in check, or that group needs to find out how to get him out of there and get somebody else in that can work with people.
Yeah, well, it was Representative Hoheisel, who there was a tense discussion that was taking place on the floor. Representative Hoheisel went over to talk to Carr. There was some words that was exchanged, not 100% sure what it was. And then, of course, Representative Carr, then I'm going to say, how do I say this? I'm going to say in like fashion, or from previous, I don't know, things that have been reported on, to say that maybe there was some cool that had been lost. And now it's turning into an investigation, which I find very interesting because the headline was from Cake News, Kansas lawmaker could lose seat as committee investigates incident. And I think that's like a very, very, very thin thread of a margin that somebody would lose their seat based upon that investigation, any more than an investigation into a physical fight that took place a few months back. I mean, I'm going back to the soundbite, the headline, the clickbait, right? But really what's transpiring is there's been an allegation made. They're now going to investigate that, and then the investigating committee is going to determine what actually transpires. But leading into this, I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Is there, it seems like the farther we go when it comes to anything political related and conversations that people have, whether it be in the public or even as elected officials, that appropriate decorum is starting to slip. Are you guys seeing that?
Big time.
It's been slipping for a while.
Well, I've been a watcher, okay, for many years now. And I'm going to say over the last decade, especially over the last 5 years, 6 years, 8. I mean, it's just getting progressively worse, in my opinion. Agreed, or
Yeah, I think some of it is, the dude got into a fight, and nothing was. I mean, the group should. I forget what you call it, but there's a thing where you have to censure them, and then what are you going to do during that process? And when you slap their hand, and it happens again, the people are so divided and. Their team, my team, and if we do this and they get involved and they can bring in one of their people, and it's just so manipulative that bad people, when they get in, you should never put your hands on somebody in a situation like that. Done. Okay, so it happened. So now the same individual's involved in another altercation in another way that's getting headlines. What's going to happen? And this is when you get to where the system is so corroded and rotted out we're trying to win everything instead of trying to do what's right by getting our people in place, when it just takes away all credibility to every discussion that's possible. You just black out everybody else and say, well, we're going in this direction. No matter what you bring to the table, I'm not going to go with it because you're the other side. I mean, this is the part that bothers me with our politics today. And I hope to think that some of that's starting to shake off right now.
Well, you would think in some ways it is, in some ways I'm not sure it is. And
the people that double down on the wrong things will lose.
In the end.
I believe it. I'm looking for it. And I'm looking to wipe people around me out that are doing that kind of stuff because I'm not putting up with it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And that's just, I don't know how else to say that other than be honest about how I'm watching the world. It's like, if you're going to double down on something that's ridiculous, you can stay over there. Yeah. I don't need anything to do with those people. And if I'm asked a direct question, I'm going to give a direct answer of why I feel the way I do about certain people.
And then there's an anomaly, too, that seems to be taking place, which is regardless of what the facts are, I'm going to use my ability to come out, not mine, but the individual, their ability to come out and provide the talking points and the message that they want to put forth, be it honest or not.
Right.
So it's almost like create a little bit of insightfulness, get a little bit of media coverage because of it, and then that becomes my talking points to move forward with, so that way I can promote my message of whatever that message was regardless. I mean, it's like this cyclical thing in a lot of ways, and it affects all levels. I mean, we were talking that first, we might be involving the same person here, but the first one was a confrontation between a city council member and a representative, and now the same representative is there that's at the House floor having a problem with another representative, and then it just keeps compounding itself. Chad, you got anything to say on that? Because I got another example of some things that hit the news that I think.
Well, I have a question. So you read the headline from Cake News. I'm just wondering, is this all about the accusations that Hoheisel was walking through the floor and through the Democratic caucus saying that's BS? Is that where this is coming from?
I believe that it was. We're going to wait for that investigation to come out. But yes, I believe that he went over to that representative because of what that representative was saying, which was, if I'm not mistaken, inciting and saying that anybody that doesn't agree with what this person is a racist. And so then on the cusp of being called a racist, and the reason why this person was not for one thing or the other, then that led them to go over and make the statement that that is in and of itself a joke. What you're saying is a joke. That's not why this is the way that it is.
Because at least
it's all got lost in the weeds.
At least one of these tiffs led to a investigation that included 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and they heard testimony behind closed doors and then recommended everything be dropped.
So that's been updated at this point. So that nothing will happen because of it, basically.
That was reported on February 25th.
This is something we're seeing something different here because this was March 2nd.
Okay, well.
So
it's obvious that decorum in the House of Representatives is a major issue.
Yeah. I'm not, well, I mean, and then that leads on to more decorum issues. I want to cover something real quick before we move on to another situation about decorum that I wanted to cover about Kansas lawmakers are considering major change to special elections. I want to just tell everybody that we'll cover that in the future, but what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to change to where special elections won't be determined at different times, that it will be at the same time every year. So if there's a special election that comes up that they're going to have people vote on, that it's on a firm date going forward, always the same date, and it won't change based upon when they choose to do it or not.
Here's an example real quick. I've been looking for, I was going to use an example. You talked about when people come out and just flat out lie for whatever narrative they're going against. And I was going to use a big name, which is Obama, when he came out and flat out lied when he knew some information, but he chose to use the talking party thing. And I'm looking for it so I can have the specific lie that it's real. It's already been proven. And you can't find it. I'm on 3 pages of Google looking for something that should be searchable, and it's been hidden because he's a superstar in one of the political parties, and they do it for both sides. But here's another, and then I just come across this just for reference. Joe Rogan says YouTube search isn't showing his Trump interview, which is true. That was the most watched interview at that time with like 56 million views. And during that time, it was throttled. That is wild.
Yeah. Well, it happens.
It was like almost you had to go certain places to find it. You had to really seek it. It just wasn't popping up, yet it was still climbing and getting the most views. These are the type of deep manipulations that are happening behind the scenes that are causing us to have these problems. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, that's like I was saying.
I'm literally going through it right now, looking for something that I already know I saw. I've read it. I'm like, I want to be specific. And it causes me to start doubting myself just in this little search. I'm like, then I'm going, wait a minute. They don't want that to be found.
Yeah.
They, meaning Google right now, is what I'm looking on. And I should know better, but.
Well, and I see, that infamous they, right, that we try to stay away from.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about this is...
I don't want to beat up on Andy, but I cannot stand... I cannot
so I said Google because I'm
Google.
It's like they.
It's
who are they?
Yeah, Google.
It is,
algorithms,
like,
the people creating the back ends.
If you could go and find the individual that's responsible for creating algorithms for a specific company, i.e. Google, to be able to decide, hey, here's a name. Here's a name. These individuals are the ones that I'm pointing at.
And here's the thing.
And it's company policy from
you
the
go
top.
fast. You report things. You move fast. You read a lot of stuff, I'm sure, because I know I do, and I know you do too. Once it's moved through, a lot of times we read information off of people that have put it out, media outlets, where it be from left, right, in between, in the middle. And do we ever know where the origination of these things came from to begin with?
Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
And I say most of the time we don't. Other than what some people that we like to hear to say the things we want to listen to that agree with our political views, our lifestyle views, our social choices.
Our own biases.
We want to latch onto those things. And that's another part of the problem. And we're all being manipulated. And I said all at some level. And it's most of us are not aware it's happening because we're going so fast in this media, the way we're consuming media. And then I'm going to rewind it to the point where we've talked about before is Chad does not have the time with the amount of work he has to do unless he has a real workforce. If we don't fund that, we're in trouble to do the legwork of these big stories that need to be done. Yes, he does a great job churning out our local stories, but sometimes I'm sure you have an itch to do. And you do projects.
Oh, I've got one that I'm wanting to do right now that
you've got to piece it in.
I just didn't have the time.
But this is what's going on, right? We've got to figure out how to put names in the they and thems, stop insinuating things, and really, if we're going to do what we're doing, go to that next layer. So I'm going to have to start now writing these things down when I see them. So if these things come up, I could be real specific about things that really bothered me. And Obama tanked himself by doing what he did during that speech. It hurt him, and people know it. And it's like, but why do they do that? Those are the conversations I think we have, and then we've got to refrain from doing it as well and repeating that stuff. Yeah. Because when somebody like that I voted for his first time does that, it bothers me. And I didn't vote for him the second time, and that literally changed my political views. Yeah. But that's my story. We'll get to that another time. But this is, Lance, the chaos we're working in.
Yes. Well, it's like I mentioned on a previous program. It is getting more and more difficult to find accurate, credible information. I mean, if there's a topic that I would like to cover, okay, you're going to get two separate extremes. And it doesn't matter what it is. So then once you get that, then you have to go use your critical thinking skills and say, okay, well, what they're saying is probably not 100% correct. It looks like there's an agenda that's being pushed here. There's a perspective that someone's writing the facts into to be able to project. And this happens, I'm going to say it happens a lot. Okay, one of the reasons why I do appreciate Chad and the Kansan is specifically because I can take facts And then I don't even have to write an opinion. I can just write it in a way that would lead people to believe one set of ideology or come to an conclusion. It's like I'm helping you come to a conclusion of the facts that I'm writing. And that's not even considered an opinion. That's just considered writing. But even then, like I was saying, you got two different sides here. And then the amount of energy and effort and time it takes to be able to break that down. Well, there's already 5 different things that have transpired that you're wanting to look at or that you see happening. It's like everything's just moving so fast. And speaking of this, all right, you guys, I know you have seen it. I know everybody that's listening has seen it come up on their feed. It doesn't matter who you are. It's come up on your feed. This reporting of what transpired with Senator Marshall at a town hall meeting in Oakley. Okay? And both sides, I'm just going to call it like it is. I'm sure I'm not making any friends here, but it's my ability to speak truth to power. Both sides are inaccurate. And the truth is in the middle somewhere.
No, the truth is in watching the entire thing.
Yeah, which you don't get to do because then they're taking one little clip.
Yeah, even watching it, though, I've watched it. And even watching it, there's some egging on and some things that you could tell there was tension before that camera started. But I saw the whole thing. And even one of the people, the one I watched with the full video of the camera, had an agenda.
Oh, sure he did.
He was trying to poke in a little bit when certain constructs about what they want Marshall to be, which true or not, make your own decision, was brought up. And there was a hostile crowd there. That's true. I saw it.
Yeah. There's no question that crowd was hostile.
It makes it hard. It makes it hard. So anyways, and go ahead, Lance. I know you have a personal experience, and I remember that experience, frankly.
My first question then becomes, okay, I see Senator Marshall, God bless his heart, that says, is pushing the narrative that it was a town hall meeting where paid protesters from the Democrat Party showed up, and they were there to incite all kinds of problems, and showing that it's, Logan County was a highly Trump, voted in area. And, I'm watching this unfold. It's like, well, okay, first off, people being unruly in a meeting is not a Democrat only thing. All right.
And it's not a new thing.
And it's not a new thing. It's, I've had personal experiences where I walked into people that were already incited into being for their candidate. This isn't a primary, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so then it was anger and shaking their heads at me and yelling, towards me or interrupting what I was saying, following me outside and accosting me afterwards and yelling at me. And I mean, it's really trippy when you're in this situation. But to say that,
and then
Roger
deny
Marshall,
they did it, by the way.
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, of course. Of course, that never happened. Although there's witnesses. It's whatever. It's whatever. But see, I look at it like, okay, there's an element early on where I was like, man, how could people really behave like this? Like, I don't behave like this. If I don't agree with somebody or something, I don't go accost them in my anger and rage and mean face and try to corner you off and yell at you. And I mean, I just don't understand. I don't see that but that goes back to that political discourse that we were talking about. But then again, I got to say the flip side is that to say that everybody there, the narrative that Roger Marshall is pushing right now is not
it Roger that's pushing that, or is it Donald Trump?
No, it is Roger Marshall. It's coming from Roger Marshall's Facebook profile.
Because I had not seen that yet.
Yes, absolutely.
So, quite honestly, I mean, I've had my differences with Roger a lot. And I want to say, if you think they were paid, then you frickin' prove it. Okay?
Especially
prove
if you're
it.
Put it out like
I'm
that.
not taking your word for it.
Well, here's this.
That's the deal.
According to Senator Roger Marshall post, he shared a tweet, an X, Zex, or whatever we call it nowadays. I have no idea. But it'll change sometime soon, I'm sure. Paid troublemakers are attending Republican town hall meetings. It is all part of the game for Democrats, but like our big landslide election, it's not going to work for them. That was Donald Trump. He retweeted it or retweeted it, whatever. And he says can confirm. And I don't like that narrative.
Can confirm. Let's see the
let's see the
receipts.
So
give the receipts.
Yeah, and here's the thing, right? Brother. Because people show up that think that you're doing a poor job or don't like what you're doing or think that you shouldn't be X, Y, or Z into it. Although I do believe there should be appropriate decorum that's transpired. We live in an age in which that's not the case. We talk about it all the time. It happens at a local level. It happens at a state level. It happens at a national level. And it's not just Democrats that show up and act unruly. It's Republicans. And this idea that all Republicans think alike and that every Republican is bought into everything that's going on at this level, in the game is not necessarily true either. So I'm just, it's like this tornado is what it is.
And I don't.
Well, look at last night's speech.
Yeah.
Look at it.
I didn't even watch it, to be honest.
Look at it.
I actually watched it this morning.
You had one group celebrating everything that was said and one group celebrating none of it.
Yeah, that's the world we live in.
Whose fault is it? Everybody involved.
Exactly. And I do want to focus on Roger here just a little bit because so I just had some really harsh words for him. Prove it. And honestly, that's what I expect. Okay? And if you can't prove it, then shut up. But here's the deal. He repeatedly said during that town hall, because I have watched the entire town hall, we're not going to do this. You're not going to interrupt me. There's going to be a period for questions. I want those written down. And we can all debate whether or not that's appropriate to make everybody write their questions down and have a staffers go through them. We can all debate that. But at the end of the day, he repeatedly said that.
Yeah,
and that was the rules of engagement.
Yeah, he did.
And then those folks, whether I agree with them or not, those folks ignored that.
Big time.
And then when he got to the point where he had been pushed hard enough, he left. More power to you, Roger.
I would have left.
I would have too.
I would have left.
If after repeatedly saying, I will not be interrupted, I will not do this,
unless
I've been
I had
gone.
receipts to PR cover my ass. I wouldn't have done that part unless I had receipts that I'm willing to show, because nowadays you don't have to have receipts and people say all kinds of stuff. I'm at Norm's Coffee Bar, shout out. Love that place. On Fridays I have a ritual. I try to get to a meeting with some of my wise folks and sit with some people that I love from church dearly, and I get to spend an hour or two, sometimes 3 hours with them, depending on what my schedule looks like on Friday. I try to leave that gap for them on purpose. Show up, there's a lady there sitting there and says, "Aren't you part of the city? And where's this thing going on?" I said, "No, I'm not. I mean, and so it was like," but she goes, "Oh, well, you're some kind of elected official, aren't you?" And I didn't know this lady, never seen her before in my life. And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I'm part of USD 373. I'm part of the school board." And she goes, "Oh, well, yeah, I need to talk to you." And she proceeded. And I said, "I have a meeting I'm going to, but are you going to be here for like an hour? As soon as I'm done, I'd be more than glad to come and sit with you and answer questions." And she just seen the way she looked at me. And she kind of had a real bad body language. And she said, "I guess so, I might be here, we'll see." And I said, "Okay, well, if you're here, I'll come look for you and be more than willing to sit with you for 10 minutes. Because I already felt what I felt. So I said 10 minutes for a reason. I was putting my hook in, right? I went and had my meeting, came back and sat down. And she was like, "Are you still want to have 10 minutes? And of course she proceeded, "Sure, I guess so." Okay. And I sat down, and that conversation was almost unbelievable. And I literally checked after like 3 minutes to make sure that I was going to cut at 10 minutes that conversation, but be as respectful as I could in with what I was getting. The amount of misinformation and the amount of tying things that don't have nothing to do with what I'm supposed to be doing for the school system, it was almost unbelievable. But I kind of saw where she was missing things, where she was using terms that weren't quite right, but whatever. And she was looking for somebody to beat up. And she tried to beat me up the best she could. And I kept asking questions. She didn't have answers to those questions, but would jerk off to another. She would jerk hard left to another topic that really had nothing to do with the school district. And I'd say, well, that's not really our responsibility. And then she would jerk back over here. Well, I'm ready for them to get rid of the school board. I'm glad they're getting rid of the school board. And I said, what do you mean they're getting rid of the school board? She goes, well, you know, they're getting rid of it. I'm glad. I said, oh, are you talking about the Department of Education? Yeah, that's what I mean. Oh, okay. Well, what are the reasons you're glad that they're getting rid of that for? I'm telling her where I'm at with that. Just asking her the question. And it was just unbelievable to see these types of these little pops, and she's trying to walk through this thing and she's hearing this narrative. And this is my whole point. She's hearing pieces, and this is most people. Guys, we have to remember when we communicate to people, this is most of our community. Mm-hmm. She's heard things and is hearing these narratives like what you're seeing here about paid operatives showing up to Kansas to go to a small town hall to make Roger. Is it possible? Absolutely. Did it happen? I don't know. Show me the receipts. Because if that is, show me the receipts. Show me the fake bastards that were there, and we should plaster them everywhere to say don't do that anymore.
And I'm gonna make a statement right here about that.
Roger that. Roger. It's like pun intended.
Straight up, because I watched the whole thing. Show me the receipts and prove it, and then I'm gonna blast the people that they hired.
Boom.
Because they suck.
Boom.
I mean, and admittedly, but one of those dudes got interviewed by national media, and he's like, "Do you think they really would have hired me? I'm not able to speak in public well enough for that." It's like,
well, and his biggest concern
and here's the part to tie this in earlier, real quick. That detail that they put in there that we don't get the answer to, and we just move along because we want to listen to what we think it was, depending on what side of the aisle we are on. That extra step that doesn't give you the power of the pen to actually report something real is not taking place. So we should follow up on that with the state of Kansas because he put it out as people who voted for him. I'm one of them. And say, dude, where are your receipts? How do you know that? And who told you that? And if a staffer lied to you, we need to hit them. And if you got from a media person in Washington, this is what you should write, and you blindly followed it, or one of your staffers did, that needs to be dealt with.
So do we come to the consensus? We come to the consensus that we're not faulting him for leaving the town hall.
No,
oh, heck no.
Obviously, it was an unruly situation. The criteria that should be followed was not being met. It says the best thing you can do if you're at a table where respect is not being served, you should get up and leave. Understandable. Okay, understandable.
Oh yeah.
But to me, there's also this part of it that we have to consider. I mean, just going back to me here, okay? You have to accept that there's a certain portion of this that is politics as usual. And it's that not everybody that you think should agree with you agrees with you. And like the incident that we were talking about, the person, I'm sure he was a Republican voter and he, appreciated everything that Roger Marshall has done. He just had some concerns. And that was overshadowed with anybody that is critical of me and where I'm at and where I'm going and what I've done is the enemy rather than somebody who just doesn't think like me. And I'm telling you, I've dealt with this. Dirty politics as usual. I've got to say it. If there's anything that could be experienced negatively about politics, I personally have experienced.
So here's an experience that I had several years ago that I think, it'll help lay out the perspective that I have here because I laid it out. The dude, he gave the rules of engagement. Seriously. Several years ago, there was supposed to be a town hall at the Newton Public Library with Ron Estes. And Ron Estes didn't show. He had a staffer show. I don't remember his last name, but I remember his first name because it was just so wild. Roman, if you're out there, man, again, because you've heard me do this before, and you've got the email, I am so sorry for how that went down. People were so mad that Ron didn't show up. They treated him like dirt. Absolute dirt. He sat there and he took it for the hour that thing was scheduled for. And at the end of the hour, he was gone.
Yeah.
And there was no opportunity for me to sit and talk to Roman afterwards, I had already told him, from my private citizen hat, what my concerns were, and it was all around Amtrak at the time. And he was very thankful that I talked to him about it because nobody else was talking about that. And it is a concern for Kansas, and it's a concern on the Hill. But they treated him like dirt. So this is not a new phenomenon.
Mm-mm. It's actually a mode of operation.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that
we watched the thing that happened. If you watched the town hall, and it wasn't town hall, it was the Chamber of Commerce, Newton Area Chamber of Commerce update, legislative update. There was some friction around some decisions that had been made at the state of Kansas level. Obviously, not taking anything away from the concern that people had about this one particular topic, it began to get a little bit unruly. And then not only that, but afterwards, the people that were unsatisfied with what transpired, obviously both at the voting level, but then with the lack of engagement or response they felt they were entitled to, then went out and tried to poke the finger or point the finger or poke the bear at then the Newton Area Chamber of Commerce, saying that it was a designed plan that they started from one side to the other, so that way people couldn't ask these questions. It's like,
Yeah, they said the moderator didn't call on certain people basically for
started on one side to the next.
Right, yeah. which was total farce.
Yeah.
And anyways, I don't want to come off of this, Lance, because I think this is really important. This is the root of what today's conversation is about, where we should maybe figure out how we should dig this out, or do we continue to pursue this. I would have left that meeting that I saw. I'm surprised he stayed as long as he did. Those 2 or 3 times I thought, oh, he's done. He's going to walk out. And then one time he had utterly sat back down because he had stood up, and he kind of went to grab some questions and engage them and said, this is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. Like you said, it was the second time. And I thought, oh, he's going to leave. Because there was a lady that interrupted him again from the left, from his left, while he was sitting engaging the crowd. And he engaged her and said, you keep interrupting me. And I thought, that's it. He's going to leave. And he stayed. And I only watched about half of it. I didn't watch the whole thing. So I didn't see the part that he left. But I would have left. That part doesn't bother me. The part that bothers me is you putting all that sauce on it. And if it's real, show it. Mm-hmm. And if we're too ignorant to know, it's too complicated for us to tell you how we know that, explain it. Do your best to explain it to me as a little guy who doesn't get things. Give me that respect. And we can't just take that anymore with the extra sauce to cover your 6, because most of us, like Chad said, whether you agree with his politics or not, agree that the way he was being engaged would have caused him to leave.
Yeah.
Any rational human being in a leadership position would have, why am I putting up with this right now? This is not what I signed up for. And I told you how I was going to do this. I've talked to you about how I was going to go about doing this. We are taking questions, write them in. Again, I love that. You can debate whether you like that or not, or it should be a popcorn thing. I would take on whatever questions from the audience as long as it was respectful and you moved it around, because I really want to hear and want other people to hear the vibe. Because if you're strong in your positions, you shouldn't be scared of that.
Yeah. Well,
if you're not there just for talking points, you should be able to work through it.
And then to say that Democrats are not motivated and activated right now, because I'm watching this transpire, and they are very much so.
Yes, they are.
To say that out there in Western Kansas, in God's country, where I lived really very close to Oakley, to say that there's not Democrats in Colby, there's not Democrats in Goodland, there's not Democrats in Hayes, there's not Democrats in Waukene, there's not Democrats in Quinter, and I can keep throwing city names out here if you need to, folks, that if there's a town hall meeting that takes place in Oakley, and the person that you think as your senator is going to show up and you're in disagreement with them, that there's not some kind of messaging that goes out that says, hey, all the troops, guess what? This person is going to be here at this time, this location, this date. We need to show up en masse so that way we can discuss and let them know our frustration with the choices that they're making. Well, I promise you, there's a couple thousand people out there that could have showed up to that. Not everybody in Western Kansas is a Republican. Yeah, a mass majority, 85%.
And let's get to the roots of why those people are upset right now. Is it because he walked out? No, I don't think that's it. They don't feel like they were heard. I mean, so Roger, Jerry, Mr. Wichita, dude, you represent Democrats too.
That was another thing I was going to.
And they want to be heard.
Yeah.
They want to be heard by the people who are responsible to hear them.
I needed to hear that. That one hurt.
Well, you
So-
represent everybody,
and
right?
that's-
I mean,
and that's
not
why
that
I
you
say-
agree with them, but
And that's
yeah.
why I said we can
Difficult.
debate the whole thing about the written down questions, because not only, I mean, and it's great that he was very upfront and said, we're going to take, you need to write your questions down. I'm fine with that. But there's another statement that got made. We're going to sort through those. And we're going to take out the duplicates. Well, guess what? If I'm angry at you, I'm not going to hear, we're going to take out the duplicates. I'm going to hear, we're going to sort through those.
yeah.
All right? And those are people that want to be heard and need to be heard by you. It's one thing to not have time to get through them all. Because he wasn't going to have time to get through all the
But
questions.
then you'd have people mad about that too, Chad.
But that's one thing. It's another to not have time to get through them all when we've sorted them too.
That's a powerful message. I mean,
So, yes.
even if I don't, that lady I sat down with for 10 minutes. However, that was an exercise for me more than it was for her. And I believe I did her right at the end of the day. But I got to learn a little bit from that
Yeah, and
engagement.
at the end of if she walked away and felt heard, you satisfied at least one of those needs that she had.
Which is part of my job when I step in the arena.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Another difficult thing that I find while we're on this subject matter, is that coupling all this together is this responsibility on our behalf, our own personal responsibility to whoever might be listening, is not everything you hear is accurate, truthful information. Having been
Next time, give her a card that has thekansan.com on it.
tell her to
Put it in
Tell
my pocket.
her, tell her to sign up for there is a free part of the website. You get like 3 stories in a month or whatever for free. So,
Give me like 20 of them.
there you go.
Right.
I'll tell somebody to make me
It's,
some
Start
business
handing them
cards.
out.
but it is mind blowing. I mean, I'll tell you the majority of the time that I've ever ran for an election is probably spending a considerable amount of time going, that's not what I said here. This is what I said. It's right here. It's right here. You didn't read it, so you have the ability to go read it, but you're just going to take the sound bite that somebody threw in your lap and not go actually research it yourself. I don't know what you do with that. I don't.
Well, and algorithms are not making that
right
any
now.
easier either, because
Yeah.
there's people creating content just knowing what the algorithms are going to do for their viewership. And there's no other thought other than that going into it, which is another scary place to be. Because in my mind's eye, I can see certain age groups being taken by certain medias because that's all they have left. And when you're talking about national media, the CNNs of the world, the MSNBCs, and the messages they're starting to double down on. There was a point when they looked like they were going to make a hard shift, and they have made hard leadership shifts at the top where I thought, oh, they're figuring this out and they're just big enough they're going to be able to make it. And now they went way back in the tunnel somehow with these Rachel, what are her names? What's this woman's name again?
I've
with
heard
the
her called
glasses.
Maddow.
These types, right? The View, these types. You already kind of know what you're going to hear. You'll hear it 3 times, and you know what the story's going to be every time certain people come up, and they're going to mention certain people and certain names, and they're going to make everything about their talk and everything going around issues they have around these people and how it's attached to those people. And they're doubling down, and I can see the demographics literally, and I'm going, that's who they're after right now. But the thing about that is that's short-lived, because a lot of those people are at ages and places in their life where you're not going to be able to rely on them long term. And if you don't change how you're distributing information and how you're going about getting it, because the young kids, there's a lot going on there. And I would encourage people to pay attention to what's happening to our young folks that are in college right now and the movement that's taking place. Those digital natives completely get it. So, and they're going to want to wrestle with you and debate you and challenge your thinking and challenge their own thinking. Very few of them are in a tunnel where they're not willing to do it. Yeah. And if you treat them right and you love on them and you give them information and empower them, watch out. The future looks bright.
Yeah. Yeah. That almost sounded like a final thought. And we are coming into the program. I had more stuff I wanted to cover, but it's still unfolding, so I'm sure we could probably cover that next week with no problems. What are you guys' final thoughts? Chad, Andy?
My final thought, it's something I haven't said that I think I need to say, and it's this. When you go somewhere, know the rules of engagement and observe them. Because if you don't, you won't get the results you want. There's my final thought.
Andy?
I'm a big boy. I choose to do this with you guys, and I choose to live in the public sector, even though I'm a private guy. And I made that choice, and I can handle it. Bring it on, all of it. Keep families out of it. Keep the kids and families out of it. I don't care how much you dislike me, hate me, especially most people I don't even know that hate me, because if you know me, more than likely we'll be okay.
Yep.
Experienced the same thing.
Yeah. But I get it though. I'm in the arena. I stepped in. My kids didn't. My family didn't. People that know me, just because they know me doesn't mean they're bad people. Get to know them too before you start hating on them just because they're attached to me. But bring it on. But leave the people around me alone. I'll leave it there. If not, we're going to have problems. And I will have receipts. And I don't want to do that. But it's getting to that point.
Yep. I echo what Andy said, but I'm not going to have that be my final comment.
I'm dittoing Andy. I've got a couple of situations in my life that have had me nervous right now, so I'm dittoing Andy.
Make sure we get receipts. Keep the receipts. I'll help.
Interesting how we all have that same experience where the low lifes will go after, and I said it, the low lifes will somehow target your child because what you said they don't agree with. Yeah, you're striking a nerve with me.
Yeah.
Because I've had to deal with that, and I got news for you. The only thing you did was make me stronger. The only thing you've done is make my children stronger. So good luck with that. Having somebody that I raised experienced everything that I have with me, arm in arm, as a child, grown up in that, what kind of a rock star they're going to be in this world, and
Absolutely.
What kind of person you've helped develop with me out of that as a very strong person. So thank you, by the way. And I also just want to say thank you to all the haters. We appreciate you. Even you have your place.
Just wait till what's coming.
Yeah. It is what it is.
This year's going to be great.
But I will say this too. You know, that was facetious what I just said. Obviously, we got our haters. Yeah.
High five.
Challenge the movement there. You know. But I also just want to take the time to say I really do appreciate all of the people that reach out and send messages that say we appreciate what you're doing. I got a real good message from somebody that said they really appreciate over all these years that they've watched me absolutely endeavor to help change the culture of our community and be a leader in that way, because, you know, helping people understand that there is a way to have these conversations, that we can have these conversations, that you don't always have to be in one camp or the other. And, you know, our viewership continues to go up. Our subscribers continue to grow. People are listening. They send us messages. They tell us we appreciate it. I appreciate the people that are starting to inquire about sponsoring with the program and have sponsored with the program. They starting to realize we're a very adequate way to advertise. And it's not for everybody. obviously. If you're worried about me saying something that might make somebody mad, I'm probably not.
You're going to be guaranteed it at some point from one of us. Here's the other thing, and you're being humble right now, but I'm going to say it because I'm part of this endeavor, and we're working on some things behind the scenes. But we have media companies now wanting to pay us for our viewership, and we're working those things out right now. Good job, Lance.
Yeah.
Way to build it.
Thank you.
Like, it's not just our advertisers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
What was the one you had? What was that number?
Which one?
Oh, just give one, because it'll blow people's brains.
Just like YouTube impressions?
Or just, like a just...
right now, I think just on Facebook, impressions were or views were 136,000 this last 28 days.
Yeah.
Nice.
And then over half a
all
million.
in the target area. We know what demographics.
Yeah.
They love me. They really do.
They do love you. They love you big time, and we're going to get better.
We're at on YouTube. I mean, there's another one I was kind of proud of. YouTube is difficult to really grow. Anybody that endeavors to do that, especially when you're focusing on local issues, and in the back end, you're putting it all local. Right? You want to saturate your own environment.
We get what the process is.
104,000 views.
Yeah. So the cool thing about that is when social media companies are sending you checks, and I'm grateful for that, and it's going to get better just because of your viewership. It has nothing to do with anybody else around it. It's the viewership.
Yeah.
And we got the formula, and we're working it. And the next steps are going to be even that much better. So keep rocking, dude. I'm proud of what you're building here, and thank you for the opportunity to be a part of it.
Yeah, thanks for being a partner in it. Thank you, Chad. I couldn't do it without any of you guys, and I just am thankful that I get to be a seat at the table. Have a good week, everybody.